Well, the Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, or SCOPA, has heard that the Hawks are expected to make more arrests in connection with COVID-19 tender fraud and corruption. The Hawks, the Special Investigating Unit, that's the SIU, and the National Prosecuting Authority briefed SCOPA in Parliament yesterday on the progress of their investigations to date. The SIU says it's investigating contracts worth around 10 billion rand, which accounts for 67% of government's 15 billion rand COVID-19 expenditure. The Hawks say 80,000 questionable payments have been identified and will be investigated. The chairperson of SCOPA, Mkhuleko Hlengwa, joins us now to talk more about this. Good to have you. Thanks so much for being with us on the program.
An absolute pleasure, Lian. Good morning to you and the viewers.
So, lots of speculation at the moment doing the rounds. The Hawks are expected to make more arrests in connection with COVID-19 fraud and corruption cases. A big one, they say, is coming tomorrow. How many arrests are expected? Will they be based in Gauteng? Are you privy to this information?
Lian, I must say that whilst we welcome the arrests, of course, and we want everybody who's implicated arrested, one must say it is a bit unfortunate that the announcement was made yesterday that an arrest would be made and when it would be made. I think that we still need to protect the integrity of the process which the Hawks and the law enforcement agencies will be rolling out. This kind of announcement in itself throws the cats amongst the pigeons, and it then, creates a diversion, and it creates heightened speculation. Of course, we want the arrest, but I don't think that what was said yesterday is helpful to the process, because whilst all those who are corrupt, of course, are expecting to be arrested, when you start putting times and dates as to when you'll be doing that, to an extent, you do not help the process. So I think that was unfortunate, but nonetheless, we continue to encourage the law enforcement agencies to actually go out in full force and pursue these criminals. As you rightly say in your intro, we are dealing with about 67%, 10 billion rands of the contracts already under investigation, and that tells you the extent of the rot. And of course, 10 billion rands is stretched and spread over a lot of people, and so this is a trend that of course must keep up over the next coming weeks and months. And already, of course, some cases will be on the court roll by January, and so the NPA will be, has enough time now to ensure that it prepares for the cases adequately.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing about these other cases that could be on the roll, as you say, in 2021, revealing 14 separate court cases could be part of the start of 2021. Are you able to talk to us about that? This is obviously the NPA talking about these cases on the court roll.
Yes, but at the same time, some of them are in preparatory stage. What we were encouraged about yesterday is the cooperation between the law enforcement agencies, particularly the Hawks and the NPA, because that makes sure that the preparation for court is actually done in real time, and it's not just a matter of transferring a docket, but the NPA becomes part and parcel of it. And so, amongst other things, the SIU is actually at this point in time seeking to have some of the contracts invalidated. You're looking at the Beitbridge border post one. You're looking at the Gauteng-related 167 million rands, so far as Royal Baka is concerned, amongst others. So there are multiple processes at play, others before the special tribunal, others are at court. Other SIU reports have in fact been finalized and handed over to the presidency, and some are in investigation stage and some at initiation stage. So you are dealing with quite a number of cases at different stages, and so our expectation is that the ones that have been finalized do need to be processed. Some of these matters don't need to go to court. Some of them require government departments and entities to actually actually begin disciplinary processes internally. The Public Works and Infrastructure Department is one of them. The 11 officials, including the Director General in that department, will have to be investigated. Leanne, one fundamental issue which is becoming a perennial headache and will require parliamentary intervention is people resigning on the eve of disciplinary processes. And then, of course, because of the labor laws in the country, those processes are not continuing. So we are proposing, and we will be working closely with the Department of Employment and Labor, Public Administration, and COGTA and the relevant portfolio committees to develop frameworks, amongst others, which are going to blacklist people from actually getting employment in the state if they've left one department with allegations that are unresolved. And, of course, blacklist them also from doing business with the state if they resign, because once they've been part of the internal processes of government in the state, they leave and come back as business people. And the SIU, we are encouraging them to continue on the trajectory of freezing pensions of people resigning until their matters are resolved. So we are dealing with a basket of issues which require, support at every stage. But the direction which the law enforcement agencies are taking is encouraging.
Yeah. I want to just get back to some of the things that were discussed yesterday. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this interview, just to think about the numbers, and we really need to stop and think about it. 80,000 questionable payments have been identified when it comes to the idea of PPE. Now, this was during, and still is, a desperate time in the world and here in South Africa. And we talk about the fact that money set aside was sitting at 15 billion rand, and 10 billion rand worth of that was questionably spent. That's 67% of the money, the total money of PPEs. Can you give us an idea of how this COVID-19 fund theft happened? We've seen reports of overpriced personal protective equipment, but there must have been other sorts of looting methods happening at the same time.
Truly, and in fact, others was the bypassing of the emergency spending protocols that National Treasury had issued, notes 3 and 8 specifically, which guide under such circumstances. You had people literally just pulling their families and friends and giving them contracts. You had a situation of companies that had been redundant for years, or new companies all of a sudden being prioritized because obviously they had been, saved for such times. And you had everybody pretending as though emergency spending is not guided by laws and regulations. No, the laws were there. I think we had this discussion earlier on in the year. And amongst other things, of course, was the fact that because we were in a mad rush, for lack of a better term, people assumed that they could do anything willy-nilly, and in that, people then abused the process. So you had a violation of Treasury regulations, the PFMA, MFMA, and if you look at the metros in particular, Cape Town, Tshwane, City of Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Mangaung, they in the municipal space account for the bulk of the money under investigation. The provinces of KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, and the Eastern Cape lead the pack. And so if you take a step back and just look at audit outcomes, and you look at the historical analysis of how those municipalities and those provinces have performed outside COVID, you are not surprised then when you find some of these things happening. Department of Social Development, particularly at provincial level in itself, was found wanting. I think, Leanne, the biggest indictment here is twofold. One, it is regrettable that we now have to spend money to recover money, because that's what we want. This money should ordinarily be servicing our people during this time of crisis. In my view, the kind of behavior we have seen of looting in the midst of a health crisis, when the fault lines of inequality are so prevalent, and pushing our people into further trouble, is a crime against humanity. This corruption is a crime against humanity. And the law enforcement agencies will have to, without any fear or favor, pursue the investigations and ensure successful prosecutions so that we can be in a position to send a message that this is not going to be tolerated. Of course, we know the law enforcement agencies themselves were captured and they have had to have a cleanup and mop-up operation. And the kind of new energy we are seeing is encouraging because even old cases are actually now coming to the fore. And COVID-19 related expenditure corruption will have to take priority in certain spaces so that we curb the continuation of this kind of corruption. It's unacceptable. And of course, we as Parliament will have to reflect on our own role in the past and currently, but also how we improve oversight moving into the future so that we are not found wanting or also coming in late into the oversight spaces. I think the Zondo Commission has asked serious questions. So in the final analysis, there are serious lessons here for South Africa generally and specifically about how we manage this crisis. And this will speak to also whether the Disaster Management Act makes for adequate parliamentary oversight or not. In my view, at this point, it doesn't, but the action steps we are taking of real-time oversight are assisting the process.
Let's talk about where legislation stands at the moment. And it's important to keep that in the back of our minds when, we especially have been told that there are going to be arrests tomorrow, or a arrest that's a high-profile one in connection with COVID-19 corruption and PPE. Let's understand, are there any regulations currently stipulating that people with political ties cannot do business with the state? Is that written in black and white?
No, the SIU has looked at that, and they were at pains yesterday to explain the difficulty in that regard. And of course, it is something that has to be looked at because we'll have to determine what we mean by people who are politically exposed and, of course, those with proximity to power. But clearly, there is an abuse of the process at the hands of political connection. There is no doubt about that. And of course, we have to take a step back and look at the whole regimen of laws and regulations in this regard. So it's inclusive of people who are politically exposed. It's about people resigning on the eve of, disciplinary processes. It is also about ensuring that the National Treasury in itself, in how it rolls out emergency spending and the Treasury notes as guidelines, is able to take into account the prevailing circumstances at the time. And so there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. This will sound probably like an oxymoron, but in one way or the other, COVID-19 has been a blessing in that it has exposed for us, insofar as SCM is concerned, the very real spaces we have to move into to tighten up the integrity of procurement processes in the country.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we look at these kind of things that are happening, and you say it is a blessing in disguise, but which I think we need to take with a huge pinch of salt. But I mean, we look at some cases that are happening, and right now under the SIU, bringing an application to declare the contract worth millions of rands that the company Royal Baka was awarded as invalid. Now, Royal Baka, as we know, belongs to the president's spokesperson, Kuselo Diko's husband. What is the status on this situation? I mean, is there speculation that this could be what we'll see developing tomorrow?
No, Alian, I would not know. That is why I was at pains at the outset of the interview to say the announcement was unfortunate yesterday because it sets into motion speculation. But what is important here is that the SIU report into the health procurement in Gauteng has, amongst others, led to the MEC of Health being discharged from his responsibilities. And that is a step in the right direction for consequence management. And the SIU is pursuing to have that contract set aside. And of course, recoveries of monies are a priority for us if you look at the Bridge Border Post, for example. I can only urge that we tread very, very carefully in how we handle any and all of these processes, whether it's investigations or whether it is the arrest. What we do not want is a situation where any public utterance or announcement is compromising of the case, because we do not want botched cases. We want successful prosecutions, we want consequence management, we want people dismissed, we want people arrested, and we want recoveries for the state. We are encouraging South Africans to bring forward information to law enforcement agencies, particularly the SIU, because they've got wide sweeping powers insofar as COVID-19 is concerned with the investigation, given their proclamation. You look at the allegations around the CFO of the Department of Correctional Services, that he may have given tenders to relatives to the value of 50 million rands. And why I flag the CFO of Correctional Services is that he left the Municipal Demarcation Board under a cloud. And already we are going to be handing over a SCOPA, the correspondence we have to the SIU to enhance their investigation into the allegations around the CFO, because it was a matter that we are dealing with. So the cooperation that we are calling for publicly must also be demonstrated by ourselves. And that's what we're calling for. The Hawks and the police must go out and arrest people, and there is certainly nothing wrong with the so-called Hollywood style of arrest. We want to see these criminals being arrested, but what we don't want is that being preempted by a public hype of speculation, because that does, in my view, not augur well for the process. So I'm not speculating, but any arrest under these circumstances will be welcome, and we have said to the law enforcement agencies, our support and appreciation for their good work comes with terms and conditions, and those terms and conditions are successful prosecutions.
I think the Secretary General would disagree with you on the Hollywood-style arrests. He himself has said, no, he's not impressed with these Hollywood-style arrests.
We can agree to disagree without being disagreeable on that one.
I suppose so. And I'm not going to get you to speculate either on what's happening with the SG, Ace Magashule, because there is so much around that. Is there a warrant? Isn't there a warrant? Are they about to pounce? Aren't they about to pounce? I mean, do you know anything?
No, we have not interacted with the Hawks or the law enforcement agencies on the old cases that are currently underway. You will recall, Leon, that some of the matters around the asbestos projects in the Stina Dairy Farm and so on in the Free State issues are largely issues emanating from the Zondo Commission, and we certainly do not want to duplicate work and responsibilities. But I'm pretty certain that today, because we will be dealing with a resolution about resuscitating the anti-corruption task team in the committee, it will, of course, trigger a situation we will have to engage with the law enforcement agencies, and that meeting will, of course, be about reporting on high-profile cases as well. I'm sure at that point it may materialize. However, what we do want to say is that any person who's got any allegations against them and finds themselves arrested or charged must cooperate to the fullest extent with the law so that they can clear their names. I think that anybody, including but not limited to the SG of the ANC, will appreciate that being tried in a court of public opinion in the absence of facts is not in the best interests of their own character and integrity and reputation. And so the law enforcement agencies are the best possible way for them to actually clear their names. And a court of law is one such. So if the SG, as he has said, believes that he may be arrested, it will be in his best interest to cooperate, as would it be for anybody. That's what we want. It enhances and enriches the process if we, as South Africans, build up confidence in our own institutions, particularly after they've cleaned up the mess of state capture.
All right. We'll leave it there for this morning. We thank so much for your time. We wait to see what develops from all of that. Thanks again. Mkhuleko Hlengwa, he's the chairperson of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Public Accounts talking to us about the expected arrests in connection with COVID-19 fraud and corruption investigations. And tomorrow has been highlighted as the day where more arrests will be made. All right, let's quickly take a break.